Remember, Philippe Gilbert was saying in that recon, wasn't he? You've got to sprint to be in the top 10 here for this descent. And that's exactly what we're seeing from Philippe Augan and the Ineos Grenadiers. Right inside, people getting bumped out.
Fourth wheel, look who's just turned up, Caleb Ewan. This man, he knows where he needs to be, when he needs to be there. He's made his move. He'd already dropped out of the first 40 on the climb, but as soon as it flattened off, he's darted to the front so he can take on this descent from the front.
And they have sacrificed Felix Großschartner. So Ewan at the front, Delis off the back, and now they fight for that position to descend. Mathieu van der Poel being placed by Søren Kragh.
Also, Christophe Laporte looking after Wout van Aert on the right-hand side. Biniam Girmay also there within the top 10. Everybody squeeze, all get through, and Mathieu van der Poel will lead onto the descent.
And just look at the big names up here. Gilbert was saying you've got to be in the top 10 over here if you want that comfortable descent. Van Aert's there, Van der Poel's there, Girmay is there, Magnus Cort not far away as well. All of those who know what they are doing. Cipressa done. It's welcome and goodbye all at the same time. $21K to go. Climbing done. Has enough selection been made, Robbie McEwen, for Tadej Pogačar to start to get excited?
I don't think enough to warrant excitement has been done just yet. I mean, they went to the front with most of the team. They sacrificed Großschartner. But when you look how many riders were still there and looked to be relatively comfortable over the top of the Cipressa, I don't know if it's been hard enough. I do know that Tadej Pogačar, if he goes down, he'll go down swinging. He is going to light things up on the Poggio. He did it last year as well, but there were others who were able to match him.
"20 kilometres remain. All the build-up has been for this. The wind's blowing behind. The entertainment has been encouraged. Remember, it's the easiest to ride, the hardest to win. We've lost some names off the back. Cavendish dropped, Bennett's crashed, Delis has just lost contact as well. At the front, it always splits up a little bit on this descent, but remember, there's 9 kilometres of an almost interminable road between the bottom of Cipressa and the start of the Poggio.
Yeah, and it's not just this descent, it's when you come off this descent. You might think on the way down, if you were just hanging in the back of the bunch and think, I've made it, I've got over the climb, I've got down the descent, I've still got riders in front of me, I'm in the line, and then suddenly get on that coast road down the bottom, the elastic stretches and then it snaps, and you can be left completely in no man's land and just watch the front part of the peloton ride away from you.
Little gaps here, nothing to get worried about. Of course, it's what's to come that will put anybody off trying to build on those gaps, as you can see Trentin there.
Now, there's a couple of corners on this descent of the Cipressa which sneak up on you. That one, it just is almost like a double right coming into you. You think you've got the corner and it goes again hard around, and I've seen a few riders come off there in the past. And a little bit of a fracture there at the front, driven by Trentin. And it looks like it's Mathieu van der Poel, and is that Jasper Philipsen as well? It's another Alpecin-Deceuninck rider in any case.
Søren Kragh had been at the top there of that climb, helping to position Mathieu van der Poel. We know that Philipsen was a little further back, and he was well placed at the top of the climb, rather like Caleb Ewan had been, albeit not in the first of the line. Now then, let's look. Van der Poel on the radio. It is Philipsen, I think.
No.
Oh.
I'll go with your call.
Yeah, I think it is
the previous
Kragh,
one. The previous one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was the man doing the damage on the Poggio last year.
Philipsen was in the group behind. This is what I said. Yeah. It does settle down here, doesn't it, on this 9 kilometre run. Trentin just in conversation there with Ulissi. Van der Poel is at the front on the right hand side. Pogačar's making his way up. Laporte is helping Van Aert. You can see not too far behind Caleb Ewan's there. Number 2 there is Nikias Arndt. And it's a very good, strong-looking team. Andrea Pasqualon remains as well. Damiano Caruso, Matej Mohoric. Next up on the right-hand side, the most electrifying 10 minutes of the cycling season. But on the left, while we look at Poggio, it is Niels Pollitt who's decided to try and take a flyer. And of course, he now has the freedom, doesn't he? Bennett's out, Van Poppel's gone. Why not have a go?
He certainly does. I mean, this is a good move by Pollitt. But you can see everybody thought, well, we're here, we're in position, but we don't want to be doing the riding ourselves on the front. So there was a real standoff for a moment. Niels Pollitt, he doesn't need a written invitation to go on the attack. He gets a little glimpse of a chance and he's off. Bahrain doing the chasing behind.
It would take an exceptional rider to go on these 9 kilometres between the bottom of the Cipressa, the start of the Poggio, hold it, still be able to climb, and then take the win. I would say it's one of the hardest things to do in professional cycling.
Yeah, and at this point now, it doesn't become any more about chasing a break or chasing a lone attacker. It becomes about racing for position to get to the foot of the Poggio in first position. So with that going on, that becomes the chase of anybody up the road, and it is just would be just an enormous ask to survive that.
Arnaud Demar is still in this group as well. Next, we're heading up to the Poggio. Let's get some details from Adam Blythe.
Let's talk about the Poggio. The descent of the Poggio, arguably one of the most exciting parts of the race. It can be won or lost there. We're going to have a look at the times now. These are the Strava times. In 2021, Simon Clark had a rocket strapped to his backside by the looks of things and went down there in 3 minutes 11. 2020, Stuyven went down 3:18. Mohoric, which is surprising, went down slower than Stuyven did in 3:32. And finally, Nibali in 3:43. The conditions will change that a little bit, but in terms of the descent itself, it's quite a technical one. We've seen last year Mohoric flying down that hill with a dropper post on. And I just want to highlight, we'll see the dots moving down here now, and that shows the rider. This is an average speed, so it can change. Riders can speed up towards the bottom, slow down a little bit. But I just want to highlight, in terms of the distance, we think that 10 seconds is not that much. Really, in terms of things, it's not a lot, but in terms of distance, this late on in a race on a descent that's only just over 3 minutes long, that distance is absolutely huge. 300-400 metres, maybe 500 metres. If you've got that distance to make up going into that final part into Sanremo, that is a long way to make up, and we can just see how far it is in terms of distance. The flat part of the climb, well, the flat part of the descent as they get into Sanremo, if you're attacking down the Poggio here, you want to come into that flat part solo, because if you're faffing around, if you've got riders with you, you're all going to be looking at each other. You're all going to want to save energy. So for me, if you're attacking on the Poggio, on the descent, you want to be solo. You do not want any other rider with you if you want to be in with a shout of winning Milan-Sanremo.
5 kilometres to go to the start of the Poggio ascent. Pollitt has been caught. Sagan is still there. We've seen Demar. Ewan's look good. There's quite a few sprinters remaining. But what's going to happen? Who'll go out the trap door on the next descent? He might have been good to now, but 290 kilometres in, Robbie McEwen, the legs can just give up.
They can, and it's all about positioning too. There is Caleb Ewan in the wheel of Jasper de Burst, his teammate. It's on the right-hand side. He knows every inch of this run-in to the Poggio and every inch on the run-in all the way to the finish on the Via Roma does Caleb Ewan. That bunch now down to some 50, 55 riders, maybe, with 13 kilometres remaining. And it's going to be the big rush coming up for the foot of the Poggio di Sanremo.
Florian Sénéchal with the French champions jersey at the front, and right in the mix is his compatriot at the back of a 5-man line, Julien Alaphilippe, the former winner of this race. Who's still here? Who's hanging on? Who's got anything left? There's no unique formula to win this race. That is why it's so special. The next 3 kilometres will fly by. It's a race into the foot of Poggio.
It's just like a washing machine now, isn't it? You just see them coming round left and right, and just the big squeeze comes on. Just got to make your move at just the right time. Defend the front when you've got it. Try and just block anybody getting a run to come up around the side. And as soon as the road opens up, gets a little bit wider, which it does again on the way towards the foot of the Poggio. Again, it'll be like coming into a bunch sprint. And for some riders, there'll be an imaginary finish line at the foot of the Poggio. Here comes Mohoric on the right.
Here. Look at all the fight. Mohoric, as you say, on the right. He's there with Caruso and Pasqualon. Left-hand side, you can see the Intermarché riders amassing around Biniam Girmay, the man hoping to make yet more history. One of the big trailblazers in the last few years in this sport. There's Turgis through the centre. Sagan is still there, and Mathieu van der Poel tries to regain that position on the right-hand side. 2.5 Ks to go now to the Poggio.
Yeah, Alpes and de Koenig coming to the front. They were tracked by Ineos Grenadiers. They've become somewhat separated now with Filippo Ganna, so they were really well organised just a moment ago, and that's how quickly it happens in this stage of the race when the big rush comes on. But the Total Energy riders, Peter Sagan's teammates, they're up there without him at the moment, but Turgis, the man who was second last year, is there.
The next man to be looking after Mathieu van der Poel, by the way, is Quinten Hermans. Cyclocross star, Liège-Bastogne-Liège podium finisher last year, remember. Girmay on the left as we look at it. Everyone else on the right. Now we switch sides.
Riding their own race, Intermarché.
Just looking as well, Consonni's still there for Cofidis too.
I was wondering if Brian Coquard was there as well, but that is Consonni who is still there. And I thought it was Benjamin Thomas who was pushing himself up on the right-hand side as well.
Strong rider for Cofidis as we look around and wonder where Wout van Aert is. Towards the front of the left-hand side blue helmet as we look at it. Moving up. This is Sénéchal who's done his job now. We will unlikely be there to see him again towards the end, but Van Aert's lost his positioning as we're approaching the Poggio.
Yeah, he's been shuffled backwards a long way. You often look for that blue helmet just standing out above the rest, but he is not anywhere near the front at the moment. Haven't spotted him for a couple of kilometres now.
A couple of helmets belonging to his team a little further back. Left-hand side, you can see he's got one teammate just behind him. Imagine that's Laporte.
Yeah,
way
they'll be
down
the only
though.
two left, I think, now. Yeah, they're a long way down, like this close. They're within 1.5 kilometres now of the Poggio. That is not a good spot to be in for Wout van Aert. He'll probably be more comfortable when they get on the Poggio itself and he's able to move himself up as they start the climb.
Nielsen Paulus being put into position. Here comes Trentin to position Pogacar. We're inside the final 800 metres. The lead out now into the bottom of the Poggio. Strap yourselves in, sit yourselves down, get ready. Bahrain Victorious are moving to the forward, positioning their leaders. Everybody else is trying to do the same. Lose the position at your peril now. The sparks are about to fly. It is the most electrifying moment of the whole cycling season. We're racing now into the Poggio di Sanremo. Up we will fly, down they will dive. Van Aert has made it back just about the right time. A big move up to the left. But what are the energy reserves? Are everybody still there? Is everybody ready? We're about to find out. Robbie McEwen, the Poggio's coming. The pressure will be on.
The pressure is on, and UAE, they're trying to put Pogacar in a place where he can wind things up soon enough. There it is. That little flick-flack brings them onto the Poggio, and it is Bahrain Victorious in the lead of the race. Matej Mohoric, last year's winner, in third wheel. Van Aert now within that top 8 as they start the climb, so he's rectified the situation.
And they have begun in flying fashion. Average gradient of just under 4%. This is not a gradient that's going to scare anybody, but we've been racing for 290 kilometres. They'll be going so fast uphill here, they'll be braking in the corners. That was Wright, who did a great job to lead Bahrain Victorious in. Albacete de Koenig lose Gianni Vermeers out the back, and one by one they slip, they slide. Bahrain are serious about their title defence here.
They are. It's a long way to come for these domestiques to do a 1 kilometre job on the front of the peloton, but it is so crucial if your team leader is going to win the race. UAE, they're trying to push themselves back towards the front now, but the pace of Bahrain, Mohoric says, give it everything you got. I'm comfortable with this. There's Pogacar just sitting back for the moment in the wheel of a teammate. Wout van Aert slides up and onto him. Further back, Mathieu van der Poel. Mads Pedersen just riding past him. Caleb Ewan sitting in around 20th wheel at the moment and looking fairly comfortable.
Stander Wulf, the next rider to be dropped, the Belgian from Age Desert Citroën. At least this time he's not ending up in a muddy, smelly farmer's field.
An unfortunate crash for him the other day in Dinan into a pile of manure.
It certainly was. Pogacar through the centre. Van Aert just on his own. He's got one further rider back. Valter is towards the back of the group. And, well, there's not too many Jumbo-Visma jerseys. Now, look at the back here, because Sagan is slipping. Sagan is sliding. He might be about to lose contact. Van der Poel moves up on the left. Hermans is doing the job to position him. 8 kilometres until Via Roma and the finish line. 2.5 kilometres to the top of the Poggio, and this is the moment now, with the wind blowing behind him, that Tadej Pogacar launches his move. It's Tim Wellens with a lead out. There's already a bike length. There's 2. There's 3. They have to break into the corner, and Robbie McEwen, the party started.
Yeah, and it's critical to get it right when you do go. When the big acceleration, but then heavy on the brakes into that corner, but re-accelerating. And Tim Wellens, he is a man within his own right, could have blown this field up and made a big move on the Poggio for his own chances in the race. And things are stretching out. The gaps are starting to appear.
Filippo Ganna is hanging on, however. Wellens,
so Mads Pedersen is with them.
Mads Pedersen just on the back there of the 5-man group. And then there's the gap to Wout van Aert. Ivan Garcia Cortina's not far from the front, but look at Wellens go. A late addition to the team here, replacing Davide Formolo, and he's really stringing this out. If the sprinters were struggling before, they'll be hanging onto that trapdoor for dear life.
Well, I think this is the replacement that UAE needed to get in the team, with the punch that Tim Wellens has got, the speed that he can generate to get Tadej Pogacar into position and then stretch the field out. And Pogacar, he is just hovering, waiting for the moment they'll come around this next left-hand bend. There's a little kicker, and then it's pretty much all straight towards the top of the Poggio, but that's the time to go. It's where the road kicks up in gradient one last tough time, and that's where you can make the gaps. The heads are starting to go between the shoulders. Pedersen, Matej Mohoric is just hanging onto the wheel there. Wout van Aert back in about 8th place, and then behind him it splits.
There's the split, and Girmay is caught out in the next split. If you need to get across now. Sturven waits because he knows that Pedersen is up in the front, and we're down to 8 riders, no more, and that could be that. Wellens has done his job. Trentin watches, and now if you want to get across, you've got to go now. It's Wellens still going. Behind, trying to come across, was Nilsen Paulus in the pink jersey. That's Wellens done. It's Pogacar time, and he moves, he goes. Can he open up some free road?
Well, as soon as he went, there was a look over the shoulder from the Alpecin rider, Hermans. He has to let it go now. It's Ganna who can go across to the wheel of Pogacar. Wout van Aert, and then Mathieu van der Poel. The big favourites come to the fore.
It is Tadej Pogacar in the white and black. Just behind him you can see in the red jersey Pippo Ganna. And then it's still that 1.5 bike lengths that have to be made up by Wout van Aert. Van der Poel is just about hanging on everybody else. Unless there's a slowing up, you can count them out. We're approaching the top of the Poggio. The wind is blowing an absolute gale. And it's Tadej Pogacar who once again is going. This time he kept his powder dry. He saved it for one big move on the Poggio. He's been able to distance everybody, apart from these 3.
Yeah, and he would be, I think, maybe happy to go to the finish with Ganna, much less happy to go to the finish with Wout van Aert and Mathieu van der Poel. He's making it as hard as possible. Here's Mohoric, Mads Pedersen, and Hermans then.
Søren Kragh. Søren Kragh is a 3rd rider. Søren Kragh is a 3rd rider in the blue. 5.5 kilometres, and now it's Van der Poel who makes his move. Van Aert is the one struggling. Pogacar's trying to respond, and Mathieu van der Poel is having one of those days. Wow.
You could see through Tirreno Adriatico he was on the up. He won the Cyclocross Worlds. He needed a bit of time to recover, get his road legs, and he has pounced.
Over the top of the Poggio he goes. If he holds this gap, he could be about to join his granddad as a Milano-Sanremo winner. He hasn't got a huge gap. but neither did the man who's about to come around the corner this time last year. Matej Mohoric being followed by Mars Pedersen, and of course the teammate of the man out in front. This is Mathieu van der Poel on the left-hand side. He's already a winner on a couple of occasions to the Ronde van Vlaanderen. This is one that'll be hoping to add to his palmarès. He's got 5 kilometres to survive, but it's not over yet, Robbie McEwen.
No, well, it's that age-old battle, isn't it? Van der Poel versus now Wout van Aert, who's gone to the front in the chase group behind with Ganna and Tadej Pogacar. Van der Poel, he needs to nail every entry, every apex and every exit hard on the pedals. Huge power out of it to try and open this gap. Wout van Aert swings wide, dives through the apex. They can see him all the way down. Van der Poel, he'll be hoping that there's a little bit of, well, less cooperation in the group, and Ganna was just losing the wheel out of the corner.
Perfectly around. There are few better bike handlers than the man in the blue jersey. But is he gaining anything? Wout van Aert is still in the game. The greenhouses glisten. And they'll be looking down as they take those risks and fly around the corners. It's Mathieu van der Poel, it's Wout van Aert, but this is not the cyclocross field. It's the first monument of the season, and there's just under 4 kilometres to go.
Well, look at the pressure that Ganna is under. He's losing lengths to Wout van Aert in every corner. As Van Aert, he knows if he doesn't go full risk, he will not get near Mathieu van der Poel. They've been in this situation so many times in their careers, mostly in the mud and across the grass and the gravel. Now it's on the Poggio di Sanremo, the descent down to the finish line on the Via Roma, and Mathieu van der Poel, he'll be thinking of his grandfather Ramon Pulidor in 1961. Oh, how he would love to have a matching win.
Over 60 years have passed. Wout van Aert, though, trying to put that pressure on the pedals, trying to make sure he can come across. Let's not forget that with just over another kilometre to go until we get to the bottom of this descent, and then those almost interminable, difficult 2 kilometres. You don't see the finish line until you get to the fountain. The crowd waiting on that line start to see the first riders emerge. Will it be one or two? Will it be a big group? This time it's going to be the former. This time it looks like it will be Mathieu van der Poel with that explosive move on the Poggio that looked very similar to the one we saw when he blasted off to Strade Bianche success the other year. Mathieu van der Poel is back to his very best, and at the minute, unless these three can get organised on that flat, he's riding away to a monument victory. And it looks like he's building his gap, Robbie.
The gap is opening to Mathieu van der Poel. Ganna and Pogacar have come back to the wheel of Wout van Aert. And Mathieu van der Poel is his head down. Everything he's got. The gradient of descent has evened out. Now he's almost at the bottom. When you swing off the bottom of this descent, it's an incredibly long 1.2 kilometres through to the final kilometre. And they will see him dangling in front, but the cooperation not there at the moment. Ganna looks over the shoulder. Pogacar now comes through to the front.
At the bottom of the Poggio, 2.2 kilometres to go. Mathieu van der Poel out in front. Pogacar, Ganna and Van Aert speed off the ramps and onto the flat. They have to be mates. They have to get organised. Otherwise, it's a Dutch victory for the first time in almost 4 decades.
Well, I'm going to say now, Rob, it wouldn't matter how organised they are, they will not catch this man, barring incident or accident for Mathieu van der Poel. He targeted this race. He built himself up slowly after winning the Cyclocross Worlds. Strade Bianche was a struggle. Tirreno Adriatico was a perfect training opportunity, a couple of big lead-outs to help his teammate to the win, because his mind was on this race. Milano-Sanremo, and Van der Poel over the top on the climb of the Poggio, gapped them, dived down the descent. He will win on the Via Roma, and these guys will be fighting it out for second.
It's 6 seconds with just over a kilometre to go. Ganna fights, gives everything. Wout van Aert wants to be in the mix as well. A look behind. How far are they behind them? Little will it matter, because he's approaching the famous fountain now in front. And the city of the famous festival is going to hear a Dutch song after the finish line, I think, for the first time since the 1980s. There is that turn, and now they see there's one rider out in front in the lead. His name is Mathieu van der Poel. The first monument of the season. The longest of long days. Energy saving, tactical acumen, but you have to have the punch and the power on the Poggio. Mathieu van der Poel had every little bit of those. He sees the finish line ahead, he powers away, a look behind, and he cannot see anybody. This is his race, 6.5 hours of racing. Van der Poel last year became the first Dutchman to step on the podium since Frans Maassen in 1989. It's now been nearly 4 decades since a Dutchman won Sanremo, and Mathieu van der Poel is going to do exactly what his grandfather did in the 1960s. Mathieu van der Poel is a monuments man again. Mathieu van der Poel is a Milano-Sanremo winner. Behind the battle of a second, and it's Filippo Ganna who looks like he might take it. A big sprint from the Italian, a podium place for Van Aert, 4th place for Pogacar, but all the headlines go to Mathieu van der Poel. Dutch success. Behind his teammate will win the sprint. Great ride from Søren Kragh, but Mathieu van der Poel does what Kalper did in 85, Ras did in the 70s, and Den Hartog managed a decade earlier. Mathieu van der Poel is a Dutch winner of Milano-Sanremo. It was said earlier on in today's broadcast that Mathieu van der Poel has those days. He's not always consistent, but today Mathieu van der Poel was a very deserved winner of the first monument of the season, Robbie McHugh.
What a demonstration from Mathieu van der Poel. Not even 2 months after winning the Cyclocross Worlds. Short rest, get the road legs going. All the congratulations coming through to him deservedly. But Van der Poel, what a phenomenon he is.
All the world's attention on this man. One by one, they congratulate him.
Rob, he can target a race like very few can. He can bring himself to a level, and then in the moment when it really counts, he just seems to be able to extract that little bit more than anybody else possibly could.
All the pressure on the Poggio. He survived those first moves, then he was better than the rest. And Mathieu van der Poel going away. This was the moment, right over the top, Robbie.
Yeah, you can see the body language of the others. Wout van Aert with the head down, and Mathieu van der Poel like sprinting like it was a Tour de France sprint stage with the finish coming up. Out of the saddle, full power. The others just had to stay seated. They had no answer to just the explosiveness of Van der Poel. And as he turned onto that descent, well, they already knew they had their work cut out to catch a guy who can ride a bike and handle a bike like he can. And when he came down in this final 500 metres and took a look over his shoulder, he came round the next bend, and there was a shake of the head like he couldn't believe it, but everybody else can. We all watch it, we're astounded, but we completely believe it. There it is, little shake of the head. Unbelievable ride, Mathieu van der Poel. But it's not the right superlative, because it's just so believable, which makes it unbelievable.
Well, 62 years after his granddad, he's going to step up onto the top of the podium. It's not a bad family record, by the way. His dad finished 7th twice. Let's go and get some instant reaction from Sander Klerkers on the ground.
It took a long day towards Sanremo, but in the end, the final never disappoints. Riders here congratulating each other with a big showdown with Ganna, Van der Poel, Van Aert, and Pogacar, and Van der Poel winning it on the Poggio, helping himself in the downhill, winning it this time. And boy, he is so happy with his teammates over there. More reactions to come here from the Via Roma in Sanremo.
On the Via Roma, today's emperor is Mathieu van der Poel. Wasn't far off in Italian, though.
Wow, this really impressed me from Filippo Ganna. We expected Van der Poel, Van Aert, Tadej Pogacar, but Filippo Ganna to go with them on the podium. Like, okay, we know he's got a lot of horsepower, but then to stay with them on the descent where there were some doubts even from himself, and then pump out a sprint like he did and gap them and hold off Van Aert for a set. That is a fine second place for Gunnar.
And look at what it means. Oh, yes. The Dutch flag, once again, will fly high in Sanremo.
Eight race days was enough to get the legs going for Mathieu van der Poel. Started with Strade Bianchi, his first road race of the season. Then went to Tirreno Adriatico. Started to build the form. A few big lead-outs for Jasper Philipsen, where he won them both. But you could see Van der Poel improving day by day, the form building, and the look in his eye whenever asked about anything. All thoughts on Sanremo, and he's nailed it.
It's the perfect podium. The big stars came out to play. Mathieu van der Poel, the winner of Milano-Sanremo 2023. Filippo Ganna's up there. Wout van Aert was third. An honourable mention to Tadej Pogacar. A fifth place for Søren Kragh.